Name is Mr. DeFord. For those of you guys who don't know, I wanted to make a set of tutorials so that you could refer back to if you're at home and you need assistance to work through the personal finance game of life. This tutorial is going to focus on life decisions, things like career, where you're going to go to school, where you're going to live, if you're going to get married or not. So the first thing I want you guys to think back on is the web quest that you guys did back about a week ago on a career. You did some career inventories and you did some research on how those careers paid. And I want you guys to think back to the career that you most see yourself doing and write it here. You might even remember the education needed to get that career, and you can type that in here. If you want to start fresh, you can always go back to this website right here. And this is kind of where you can look into more jobs, more types of careers, if the ones that you got from the career inventory weren't satisfactory. And you can look at how much you can get paid for a job, how you can become one, kind of the types of the things that would fit under a job description for that. That's all your career and education. That's how you fill out these two. For marital status, it's as simple as deciding if you're going to be married or not. This, remember, is about you 15 or so years in the future. You envision you being married or not. Rugrats or no, this is whether you plan on having kids. So again, imagine yourself in 15 years. Do you still see yourself having young ones around you or not? And finally, for location, this is just an infographic that will show you the cost of living in places, but no response is needed. Once you've determined your career and you know how much it pays, either using this website or your web quest that you did earlier, what I want you to do is see how much of that is going to come out in taxes, this stuff. So that requires you to go to this website right here. This is called Paycheck City. This is just a website that kind of gives you an idea of your net pay after taxes. The first thing you want to do is choose the state that you plan on living in. The gross pay, to remind you guys, is what your annual salary is before anything is taken out. So let's say, for instance, that I found a job that paid me $60,000 in salary. You want to keep it as an annual gross pay type. You don't want to change this number, the year to date. Pay frequency, we're doing a monthly budget, so if you could change that to monthly. For filing status, decide whether you want to be single or married. For the number of federal allowances, that's another way of saying how many kids or dependents you have. Don't worry about any of this stuff right here. Leave that as is. Leave all the state and local information alone, as well as any of the voluntary deduction section. Once you have the information that I told you to put in, hit calculate, and it gives you the money that you'll need to take back to the form. The federal withholding is the federal income tax. Social Security, there's a place for you to put that number. Medicare, and then the state, this is the state income tax that is taken out. So you'll take all these numbers, you'll put them here, and then what I want you to put in right here, for the take-home pay, the net pay, that's what you have left. So for this person who made $60,000 after taxes, they would have $3,700 to work with. They would put that number here. You can also add in a spouse salary, because there's obviously a lot of cases where both people work. Miss Krill and I decided 30,000 seemed like a fair amount to have that spouse make, just so that it's still somewhat challenging in terms of making the monthly financial decisions, so that you didn't marry into a millionaire or something like that. But with that 30,000, you do the same thing. You take it to the paycheck calculator. You would put $30,000 in as their gross pay, and then you would see what their net pay is after calculating it. For this section right here, decide how much of your net pay you want to save. Remember, the rule of thumb is at least 10%. We did a web quest not too long ago about investing options. You can think back to that and decide how you would invest that money that you decided to save and write that here. When it comes to going to school, that's going to vary for a lot of people. And there's just no fair way to determine the amount that you would owe in student loans. So I decided that the best way is just to kind of use the state average. So if you're going to go to a school in Ohio, you're going to leave with an average debt of $30,000. You're going to go to Colorado, it might be 26. Obviously, in real life, there's many things that are going to change the amount that you pay in student loan debt, depending on where you go, the kind of scholarships you get, um, how much you can provide for your own college education or your parents can. But let's just go with the state average, write that number right here. Then to determine how much you would have to pay back on that student loan, I've decided 5%. When I researched it, this seemed like the average number this was the average interest rate for student loans. Some are higher and some are lower, but 5% was the average. And then take this number that you found here, the state student loan debt, as your loan amount. So, for instance, if I were to do it for this one, I would change the loan amount to what I saw for Colorado, which I believe was 23,000. The loan term, let's try and get this paid off in 5 years, I think is what I asked you to do. You can change that money, you can change that number if it seems like it's too high, and you want to extend your loan for more years. And then 5% interest rate is what we're going to change it to. So for me, look at that, 434. I know that that's probably going to be a little too high for me to pay off in 5 years, so I'm going to go ahead and change the loan term. Now, of course, since I'm spreading it out over many years, the monthly payment is smaller, but of course, as I've told you guys in class, that means the interest goes up. But this is the number I'm going to go ahead and take back, and I would put right here. All right, now, if you decided that you were going to have Rugrats, they're not free, so I want you to use this link to find out how much that would cost to raise a child. So it takes you to this website right here. You have to click on the region where you plan on living in. This makes a little difference, but you just have to kind of make a decision. Are you going to live out in the country or near a city? You can decide on that, obviously. The household income would be you and your spouses together. You have to decide whether you're going to pay for its college or not. And then this is obviously a huge number. But what I want to tell you guys is if you look at the instructions, the number I want you to take back is just the education and the miscellaneous sections, because all those other things are going to be taken care of in another way. So you take this one, the education one, and the miscellaneous one. You would add these two numbers together, and then this is super important. You would divide that number by 12 so that we get a monthly number instead of an annual number. Then you have how much it would cost to have a kid. If you're planning on having 2 or more, guess what? Take this number that you get and you times it by 2 or 3. For this one, where do you plan on living? Why do you want to live there? Pretty simple. So that should take you through the first section of the personal finance game of life, from choosing a career to how many kids you're going to have and where you're going to live. We will build off of this, but this is a good start. So stay strong.